so we get this on the record. And so for people joining us on Facebook, sorry we're a few minutes late, but you know, those pesky tech issues that we have, they just are, you know, it's our nemesis of the pandemic and lockdown. But you know what? I'm still okay with the tech issues because we still get to do wonderful things like this. So we will deal with the tech issues. So I'm going to give Facebook just a second or two to notify everybody that we're here and that we're live, and give a little bit of, you know, housekeeping, how to participate tonight and everything. But first, Jessica, it is so wonderful having you at Warwick's, and Lisa, thank you for coming back. Last time we saw you was with Adam Smyer, so we're happy to have you back with us too. Couple quick things about Warwick's. I think this might be a San Diego centric audience, and so you might all be familiar with Warwick's, but there might be some family members or some people coming and joining us from outside the San Diego area. So just a little bit about Warwick's. We are celebrating this year our 125th anniversary. So Warwick's is a 4th generation woman-owned business here in La Jolla. Yeah, go women. Nancy Warwick's great-grandfather started the business in Minnesota, moved out to San Diego back in the 30s, so, or the 20s or 30s, I can't remember which, but I don't know if you've seen on the news lately, but there was a building buyout. We were able to secure the building for Warwick's for another, yeah. So some good legacy. So if you're in the San Diego area, we would love to see you. Oh, that's okay. We would love to see you come to the store. Lots of great books to buy, the one with Jessica's essay in it, but there's also another side of the store that's great. But I'm going to put into there it is. I'm that New York Times bestseller right there. Right? So exciting. I'm going to be putting that into the comment section on Facebook, so you can easily click on that. Even if you don't live in the San Diego area, we can ship that to you. So I always like to say, any way there is to get a book, you can get it from Warwick. So we appreciate your support. Lisa and Jessica are going to talk for about 35-ish minutes today. But if there is a way for you to participate, if you'd like, in the comment section, go ahead and drop some questions in there. I'm going to let these two ladies chat after I introduce them, and then I will pop in at about that 35-minute mark with any questions that come in from Facebook. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce these wonderful women. So should I start with Dr. Jessica J. Williams? I know if you're a PhD and you need that doctor in front of right?
Dr. Williams.
I'll take it.
Absolutely. She's a Black feminist artist, educator, and advocate dedicated to the creation of authentic and empathetic relationships, communities, and organizations. She lives here in San Diego. Back in August, when Jessica tweeted at Brené Brown, "I want to have a conversation with you about how vulnerability looks in Black skin," she never imagined that Brené would agree. She certainly did not think that one tweet would lead to an invitation from Brené and Tarana Burke, founder of the Me Too movement, to contribute an essay to the anthology, You Are Your Best Thing, which is now a New York Times bestseller. Congratulations on that. With her today to talk about this amazing essay is Lisa Deaderick. Lisa is a columnist with the San Diego Union Tribune, where she writes about social justice issues in her Sunday column, as well as influential San Diegans for the one-on-one series that runs each Saturday. Each week, she's speaking with community activists, academics, volunteers, and other knowledgeable individuals about everything from the benefits of music and education and the creative work of notable artists to understanding the importance of representation and inclusiveness. A Chula Vista native, Lisa graduated from Bethune, Cookman University in Florida and Columbia University in New York, and has worked at the Union Tribune since 2008. Ladies, with that, have a great conversation. See you in about a half hour.
Thank you. Hi, Jessica.
Hi.
Thank you for taking the time to have this conversation with me and with everyone watching. I want to start off by talking about how you started down this path of contributing to this beautifully vulnerable and open anthology, You Are Your Best Thing, with that tweet to Brené Brown. So it sounds like you tweeted her in August. Is that what Julie was saying?
Yes, I think it was August.
So I'm curious about sort of what was going on at that time that led you to send that tweet.
I think like a lot of Black people in America, I was full. It was a time where we had gone through, starting in March with the pandemic and then the murder of Breonna Taylor and then the murder of George Floyd. And it was just this buildup of everything, of grief, of pain, of trauma. And so just I created this space called Healing Dialogues where we meaning anybody, I was inviting people to have conversations about really difficult topics, but just to diffuse everything that we were so full of. And kind of through processing, going through that the Healing Dialogue series, I realized Black people are this is hitting us differently. And so, I respect and look to Brené's work so much, but then I also know that I had that same tension that Tarana has been speaking about in many of the essays where it's like you almost have to struggle to see like how does this story and how does this make sense for me. And so that's what made me just send that tweet and say, hey, like I really want to talk to you about how this looks different for us, for me, and have a moment of joining with her. I honestly just thought she was going to tweet me back and that was going to be the end of it.
Because that's what I was about to ask you is sort of what were you thinking the result of that tweet to her might be?
I at my wildest dreams was not this. I thought she was just probably going to, at most maybe invite me to her podcast or something like that. I was thinking maybe she would actually just like have a conversation with me at the very most. I was not thinking
Now look at
that
you.
Brene Brown was going to slide in my DMs and say, "Hey," but I will say before she responded, so I sent that tweet and then in the middle of the night the day before she answered, I wrote an article on my blog, and that article is what caught her eye. And she said, I think your voice belongs in the anthology. And so I think just kind of like, yes, it was shooting my shot with Brene, but it was also listening very much to my intuition and just saying, like, if she does see that tweet, what qualifies you to have that conversation? How does she know that you're the person we're talking to? And so I wrote that article and just kind of made it hard to deny me, I guess. I don't know. I mean, but it was all just very divine timing. We both decided that, like, we both had that conversation that this was bigger than us and this was our way to contribute to something that was of the culture and for the culture.
Yeah, and how beautiful that you took the initiative to take that step, right? To make yourself vulnerable with
Yeah.
about that through Twitter. And so then you're asked to share your own vulnerability in this contributing essay. And so as I've read your essay a few times actually, and you talked about the imposter syndrome, growing into the self-doubt, that in your early drafts, you found yourself performing for the white gaze and consumerism, and that you were thinking about all of the ways you would or could be applauded for an essay you hadn't finished yet. Now, when I got to that part, I like had a moment of low key being offended, like, ma'am, you are very loud and in my business right now. Like, don't do me like this. Because this is so familiar, right? Like, I know I do that a lot. Like, I will spin out and start imagining, what the result of this thing will be that I'm not even done with
Mm-hmm.
yet. But I don't recall ever hearing anyone else admit that they also do this. And so seeing that, right, again, I'm feeling seen as I see that vulnerability and that openness in your essay. And so then you say that you reminded yourself that contributing this essay was a try and that you were allowed to do that without expectation. And so I'm curious, what did that process look like for you of tuning out, all of that noise and giving yourself that permission to be and become without expectation, as you said?
It looked like me just being radically honest with myself. So I would write and I would read what I wrote and then I would say, who is this for? I just kept asking myself, who is this for? Are you telling your story? And who is this for? And I had to just get Brene out of my head because I'm such a fan of
Yeah,
hers.
yeah,
And so, it's like you want to write something, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I want her to like me. I want her to think I'm this. I want other people to read it, you have to just get all of that out of your head. And so that's what I meant when I said I was, performing for consumerism, performing for white gays, performing, just trying to think like, how can I make them like me? And then you have to remember they came to me because I was just being me.
right.
And so I had to just have a sip of wine, get out of my way, and just be radically honest. Um, and what was really wild about this, no one read this essay before it came out. I didn't share it with a single soul.
Oh, you
So
did?
I didn't have any feedback. I didn't have any because I really wanted to keep it pure. And I knew that if I started inviting opinions and inviting other people to give me feedback, that it would get performative.
Mhm.
And I really wanted it to just be honest. So
That there's so much courage in that.
I mean,
I think, personally, right?
yeah.
Especially with stuff that we write that's very personal. It's like,
Mhm.
okay, I'm not going to go back in and, workshop this or go
Mhm.
back in and tweak stuff based on other people's perceptions of what I'm saying about myself.
Yeah. It's trust. It's like crazy self-trust and just going for it. And just saying, I didn't even know I was gonna make the anthology. In my head this whole time, and I don't know if this is imposter syndrome or what, but in my head it's like, well, they're they're gonna tell me in any moment that they're gonna choose someone else, or that,
Yeah.
my essay wasn't good enough, or that up until the day the literally I'm looking at my face on the book,
Yeah.
I was like, they're gonna tell me that I didn't make it or that I had to get cut. And so having that feeling, it's like you're so excited, but you almost don't want to get excited. And I
Right.
had to continue telling myself, like, you're foreboding joy. Stop
Mhm.
doing that.
Mhm. Yeah, because
Um,
we don't want to be disappointed. Something that we have high hopes for and we're really looking forward to. We don't want to be disappointed.
exactly. And I was like, I can't be disappointed like this.
Right.
I went for it. I just can't. It has to work out. So luckily it did.
Absolutely, it did. Yeah, and we're glad that it did.
Yeah.
Um, and so my next question, I'm gonna just give you a little warning. It's kind of long, but hopefully it'll be all right. So I want to talk about the expectations of being this educated Black woman in capital letters that you mentioned in your essay. And so first, I want to go to in a post on your blog on your website in March, where you're writing about your reaction to the Oprah Winfrey interview with Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, and that Meghan was talking about feeling invisible in this predominantly white space that is the royal family. Um, and you wrote, my own institutions had also failed me when they told me at one point that they would support and protect me. Having a PhD and being part of the academy was supposed to mean something, that I had earned the right to fully inhabit my space, and that my presence in the room was warranted and welcomed. That could not have been further from the truth. Instead, much of my experience in higher education has been heartbreaking, full of distrust and disappointment. Harry spoke of Meghan being too good at her job. What was insinuated in what he did not say was that it was always in comparison to her white counterpart, Kate Middleton. Meghan shined too brightly, and she wasn't supposed to, especially when it wasn't easy for the one who it was supposed to be easy for. I know that feeling. That's the end of the section I'm quoting here. I really felt that, right? Like my girlfriends and I have often talked about having followed these societal rules to go to college, get an advanced degree, attend Ivy League schools, work twice as hard. And that was supposed to make life a little bit easier for us on the other side of all that. But that hasn't really ever worked out that way. Instead, we've experienced other people being given credit for our work, like I can think specifically for me, right? I do something really well, I turn in this great story, and then I'll hear about how, oh, this white colleague of mine must have helped me in some way or initiated that story. I couldn't possibly have been capable of doing that on my own. It wasn't even conceivable that I had the skills or knowledge to accomplish that myself. Or we're tasked with training someone else to take on a higher position than ours when we're obviously already qualified to do that job if we're being asked to train that other person. And so back to your essay about talking about, you know, these expectations of being this educated Black woman, what do you recall like hearing, seeing, and learning about what it was supposed to mean to be an educated Black woman, about what you were supposed to embody with that label?
Mm. Um, I think always being put together,
Mm.
being articulate is very important, right? I think um, I can remember growing up and my family being like, "Speak up." I was the first grandchild. I was an only child, so I was like a kid around a bunch of adults a lot of times, and it was like, "Speak up, speak out." Like adults are talking to you, communicate, and so it was always like, be on, be ready, and be respectful. And I think you get to a point where you're like, when do I get to sit at the adult table? That's kind of how I felt. You go through all of this training, and I mean, my whole life, it was not a question of if I'm going to college, it was where are you
Right.
going to college, right?
I know that story. Yeah.
And so college was not a, an option. I was going to college. I got to college and I started working right after college, and I realized this is not for me because I'm giving people therapy essentially at work, and I'm not getting paid to give people therapy. So I need to go back and get a counseling degree so that they can pay me to be a
Mm-hmm.
therapist. Um, so I just always felt like this pressure to be perfect.
Mm.
Like you cannot make a mistake. I felt that way all the way through my doctoral program, right? Like I had to know everybody that we were talking about in the room. I wasn't allowed to not know.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I turned in a paper one time and I had a professor refer me to the writing center. And I said, I don't need to go to the writing center.
Right. Right.
And to this day, I'm calling out this professor. The only B I made in my doctoral program was from this professor. Now, that same paper
Mm.
won awards at WASC,
See,
won awards for the campus, but and I was like, I don't know what you're not gonna make me feel insecure about my writing.
right. Like, what else could it be?
That's
Right.
the one thing that I know. I
Mm-hmm.
know
Mm-hmm.
without a shadow of a doubt. I'm good at that. And so you're not going to challenge me there. And even, I remember them telling my advisor I needed to go to the writing center, and I was like, polite decline. I'm not. I'm not even going to entertain that feedback, but thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think I really didn't start to give that pushback until I was in my doctoral program. And I don't know if it was like you're getting a PhD, you get to have some agency, but I
Right.
started to get a little bit more firm within myself and
Sure.
within what was right for me in my doctoral program. I almost hate that it took having a PhD to find some agency, but I'm okay with it that was my process. Um, as long as I found it, I think that's the important part. And but yeah, it was just always it was a sense of pressure. This
Mhm.
educated Black woman thing was really like, you've got to be on in every way. And you don't get to be emotional in any way, right? Not too much joy, not too much anger, not too much anything. You just have to, you're the perfect supporting character.
Yeah,
And that's not me.
it feels like there's so much self-editing, at least in my head, you know. Oh, how am I coming across? How did my face look? How was my
Mhm.
volume? How was my tone of voice? You know, and then even when we are doing things perfectly, then there are still instances where that's not good enough, right? So in your example about in your doctoral program and this insistence that you go to the writing center and that you need that sort of help, that this is reminding me of being in undergrad. I'm at an HBCU, and there was a new white professor in our department, and I'm a flex. I was one of the top students in our department for communications, and I was editor of the campus newspaper, and I had been doing fellowships and gotten trips overseas to do journalism work, and I was applying to Columbia and Northwestern for graduate school, and that professor actually pulled me aside and said I needed to pick some backup schools because those were the two top schools, and it was unlikely that I would be good enough to get in. Right. So it's I'm showing up, I'm killing it with my grades, I'm involved in all these things, and you still see me as somebody who is not at the level to get it. I got into both. I eventually ended up getting into both, but it's just that sort of projection of like inferiority. Right? Despite being educated in the ways that white supremacy has dictated. Right. To be educated to be acceptable.
And there's a deep resentment when you don't take that on. When you refuse to show up in that way, and when you say, no, I'm going to shine and I'm going to own that I am the best at this. And I'm going to demand that you compensate me accordingly. Like, there's such anger, like at how dare you demand what you're worth?
Right. And so then I get to the next part of your essay that really stood out for me, where you're talking about learning to listen to your own voice instead of what you called the echoes of expectation, and that you were completely redefining the idea of strength. And so I'm curious, what was the old definition of strength that you had to learn to cast off, and how did you redefine it for yourself?
I think my old definition of strength had a lot to do with just fortitude at any cost. Like, at any cost, we've got to keep going forward. We have to persevere. We have to just keep moving forward, always, always forward. And I think now, I don't know how I would like edit that phrase, but I would just say I take a lot more pauses when I need to. And there's a lot more grace in this version of strength, or this version, because I think I just was running myself into the ground, and I didn't feel good. I wasn't doing my best work, and that didn't make me feel strong. And when I completely fell apart, no one, the people that I was expecting to help me weren't there.
Yeah.
And so it's like the people that are helping me are other Black women. And then I feel bad because I'm like, I know you got this going on and this going on, but that's usually who is taking care of me. Yeah. And so, a lot more grace. I have a lot of grace with myself. I have a lot of compassion, self-compassion. Any of my friends will tell you I'm a self-care queen. I genuinely believe, and I was listening to Yava Blay and Tarana and Brene had a Instagram live today, and they were just talking about how important it is for rest.
Yeah.
And this, like, we have to have it. And I think, my strength now includes rest.
Yeah, I was recently talking to a really good friend of mine who a couple weeks ago was also talking about that importance of rest, and her describing it as your body is very wise and knows what you need. And so when it is telling you that it's time to rest, it's important to listen. Okay, so then you also said that sometimes you've had to fight to see yourself through uncolonized eyes. And whew, my therapist has recently asked me, who is Lisa? And even at this age where I feel like I should be able to answer that so easily and so quickly, I struggled to answer her because I was explaining to her that I'm still trying to figure out what that means, um, removed from the projections of my family, removed from the projections of growing up in evangelical Christian spaces, removed from the projections of society, patriarchy, white supremacy. Like all of that has contributed to how I'm walking around now, in a lot of ways. And so when I read that line in your essay, it was like, yes, that's it. Like seeing myself through uncolonized eyes. Can you talk about what the colonized view of yourself was versus the uncolonized view you fought to see yourself through, particularly in these white academic spaces, like in the ivory tower you're talking about in your essay?
Right. Um, you know, seeing myself through uncolonized eyes is like removing the meaning and the assignment and the judgment that we've made around so many things that are Black, so many things that just were of my culture. I'm from Atlanta, so I grew up around Black people and Blackness.
Mhm.
Um, and so even down to these earrings, I grew up looking at my aunts with long fingernails and big hoop earrings, bamboo earrings, and thinking they were just, yes, gold rings everywhere, gold bracelets, and thinking they were so beautiful.
Mhm.
And then you get out to another version of the world, and that's called ghetto.
Right.
And so even, it's like seeing myself through uncolonized eyes, meaning I can reclaim this and say, no, this is beautiful. It was beautiful when it was first introduced to me. It was always beautiful. And just because someone else calls it ghetto, that has nothing to do with me.
Or the idea that ghetto is somehow not
Bad.
yeah. Yeah.
Right. Like pejorative. And so
Right.
it's like, it's taking away that power of you don't get to define blank for me.
Mhm.
Only I get to do that. And it's such a freedom and a sovereignty in being able to say, no, for me, this is what it is. I remember when I graduated, I cut all my hair off and my beautician who cut my hair, she was like, well, what's your man gonna say? I was like,
We ain't worried about him.
why are we,
Right.
it was like, what do you even, and I remember feeling like I've never felt more feminine than I do with no hair. But I had like long curly hair, and that's the ideal. Like you're supposed to, as a woman, want long, curly, flowy hair. And how dare I step outside of that? But again, like I had to uncolonize myself and say, no, but that's not, I'm hot. I don't like doing hair.
That's
I
it.
feel good and sexy and beautiful and free bald. So why would I grow my hair out? You know what I mean? But that is genuinely a fight. I have this fight with myself every 2 weeks when it's time to chop my hair. Like, oh, do I want to grow it out? No, because you still hate it.
Right.
Like,
There it is. Yeah.
you haven't changed.
Yeah.
So, it's a constant battle though of trying to tell yourself, or ask yourself, right? Why do you think this about yourself? Why do you feel this about
Where did that
yourself?
come from?
Where did that come
Let's start
from?
there. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
do I want to keep it?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And people talk about all the time, is that serving me?
It's not serving me. Exactly. So, I keep what is of service to me and this version of me. And I feel like nobody, especially if I'm teaching, I feel like that's when I'm really in my full academic space. In my job right now, I'm an administrator, so I don't really show up in that same way.
Mhm.
But if I'm in front of the classroom, my students will tell you, like, I show up in whatever I feel in that moment. It can be a t-shirt and jeans. We can be dripped and swaggy, or we can be in a blazer, we can be in a dress. Well, you never know. It's how I feel. But no matter what, I've learned how to hold my authority no matter what I'm wearing, and how to even use my moods, because I have anxiety and I struggle with anxiety and depression. And so just being able to uncolonize the idea that that is a weakness, And the idea that that makes me less than, or that makes me incapable of leading in a moment. It's like, no, my leadership just looks different now.
Yeah.
Or my teaching feels different now. I have to make these accommodations for myself, but I'm still capable, I'm still worthy, I'm still of value. And that's like my favorite part of my essay by far, is the story about the wine with my professor, where she's like, you're still good wine, you're just different. And it
Can
was like a complete reframe for me.
we really quickly like go over that story for people who might be watching and they're not familiar with it?
Sure. So it was the summer after my sexual assault, and I was having a breakdown. And I went to go visit a former professor of mine who lives in Santa Fe. Her name is Rose. And I was just telling her everything. I was like, I have been doing so well in graduate school. I've been doing this and this and this, and I've been able to, and now I can't. I'm crying all the time. I'm moody. I don't want to eat. All I want to do is sleep. And I have to do this really personal dissertation that I just proposed it. So I got to do it.
Right.
How, how am I going to, she said, when on a vineyard, you don't throw away all of the grapes just because it was a bad year. Environmental factors matter when you're making wine, but sometimes you get a cab and sometimes you get a port. It's like you don't throw yourself away just because you're having, and your environmental factors or your circumstances around you have changed. You're still able to produce, you're still able to be of value. But what you give, she was telling me your energy is more concentrated now because you're giving less of it, but you're giving more of it to less things, right? So it's more concentrated. And so just think about the things that you really want to invest your energy in. And I was like, yes, when you're drinking a port wine, you sip it, just sip slow because it's very concentrated. And so it just really helped me to be able to digest my own becoming, really. It's like, okay, if wine can be useful, grapes can be useful in any form, surely so can I.
That was such a
Um,
valuable perspective. I was so appreciative that you included that in your essay. I'd never heard that before, but it definitely it landed. I was just like,
mhm.
"Man, that's so valid."
I know. I want to get shirts made like I'm a port. People who read people who read the essay will get it, but
Yeah,
I've
love
had
it.
so many people slide in my DMs and talk about that specific part, and they're like, it was just major for me to figure out that I can still be worthy.
Mhm.
I was like, it was major for me too. Every time I think about it, I get chills still because it is a huge reframe and one that I think we need.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Um, so there's a section of your essay where you discuss the South African greeting that translates to seeing one another, and that when we are seen, we are brought into existence. And how for you, it has felt like you're waiting for this exchange with someone when you enter these spaces, but that you're typically met with silence, with being rendered invisible again. And so then in the essay, you connect that invisibility to the way that white supremacy has taught people to only ever really see and notice whiteness, and how well non-white people can perform whiteness in ways like that, how we speak or how we dress, that's when we're allowed to exist and be seen. And
Mhm.
so since writing this essay, have you been able to experience that exchange of this seeing and being seen? And if you have, what has that been like?
Yes, for sure. I am going to share this. I was texting with my vice chair today, and he was like, I'm going to remind everybody about your talk tonight. And I was like, okay. But he knows I'm super, super modest, very low key. I was even, I wasn't sure if it was even okay to share at work, which
Okay.
sounds weird, but I was like, oh, I don't know. He's like, I'm going to share it so it doesn't have to come from you. And he's like, I know this would probably make you uncomfortable because you don't want to brag on yourself. And
Mhm.
so I sent him a gift meme back of DJ Khaled and said, I appreciate you. And he was just like, yes, bless up. And I
Right.
was like, wait, what? It
Right.
just wasn't the exchange I thought I was gonna have with him because we're in these professional academic, we're scholars. But all of a sudden we were having this very real light conversation I'm like, this is, for me, it was an affirmation. Like, I'm so glad I didn't code switch in
Mhm.
that moment and say like, thank you so much for sharing it. And I really, because what I felt was DJ Khaled in my head saying, I appreciate you. So I'm glad that I, was vulnerable in that moment to show up in that way. And it was just affirmation to me, because when he said bless up, I was like, oh my God, we might as well have just said Sawabona Sikona. Like that was what happening in that moment. Like he saw me and he affirmed me in that moment. And I don't know if he realized that. Hey, Prashant, but like he absolutely did. And so I was like, this is why it's worth it to show up as yourself, because you really don't know if it's going to be accepted unless you dare to do it. But I also can recognize that so many of my work environments prior to the one I'm in now have not been places of safety where I could show up and feel like I can be myself and my job is still secure,
Right.
no matter how good I am at my job, it's still, there's still that feeling that if somebody doesn't want you there, the environment can get toxic enough to where you remove yourself. And
Mhm.
I've had that happen before too. And so I feel like being honest about what I need in a way, and having my coworkers know, like, yes, I want to be seen. I want you to know I'm Black. I want you to know, like, these are important things about me, and this is how I'm going to show up sometimes. Um, and I want to be able to engage with you in a certain way. And for them to be able to do that and be receptive is everything to me. So
Yeah.
I think it was a beautiful moment of like daring and affirmation that just happened today. So yeah,
I love
I love
that.
it. Mhm.
Okay, so I can see that we're running low. So I'm gonna skip some of my other questions and I'm gonna ask you this last one. So
Okay.
it's at the end of your essay where you're talking about how the act of surrendering allowed you to stop fighting and to listen. And so then by listening, you had the space that you needed to hear the story being told and to change it if you needed to. And also that having the strong community gave you the strength to continue speaking your truth. And so then you say, it was never about what I had to obtain and always about recognizing what I carried innately. Dangerous is the woman who can give herself what she used to seek from others. Limitless is the woman who dares to name herself. The way I see it, shame cannot oppress what acceptance has already claimed for sovereignty. Okay, first of all, talk about going out with that mic drop. But my next questions are to ask you, what did you realize you carried innately? And what have you been able to give yourself that you used to seek from others?
Oh, that's such a good question. Applause to the second one is immediately.
Mhm.
Um, but I think I carry innately, people like to listen to me. I don't know why. I feel like I have a way of communicating really complex things from across, like, here, and connecting them in a way that resonates and lands with people.
Mhm.
I feel like I have a way of teaching and of healing through just showing up and being myself and allowing other people to do the same. And the things that I used to seek from others was really just the the affirmation that I could do all of those things,
Mhm.
right? I wanted accolade, or I wanted people to notice me in a certain way. And I just realized, even when I got it, sometimes it wouldn't feel like enough, or wouldn't feel, it just
That
didn't feel
validation.
like I thought it was gonna feel, when I won this award or when I got this recognition. But um this writing this essay was the most proud of myself I've ever been in my life. And I think the reason for that is because it was such an isolating meaning creatively isolating. I did it on my own. I trusted myself. Um and I really just like was vulnerable. I really just tapped into the vulnerability and just stayed with it. And I think that's what made me so proud to put it out to the world, and that people are resonating with the essay and with all of the essays, because I think we all did that.
Yeah.
We just answered that call to really be vulnerable and to sit with discomfort for as long as it took to articulate our stories. And that is such a freeing feeling and such a gift. So that's why I feel like, the mic drop quote, I wrote that sentence and I was like, oh, this has to go at the end. Like, nothing else can go after this.
Right. Yeah.
So because originally it was not in the end, it was somewhere, and I had to move. I was like, no, this is the end.
Yeah, you got it.
This is all that needs to be said about everything. We end here. So yeah, sovereignty. That's it.
That's it. Thank you so much, Jessica. I've so enjoyed talking to you, reading your essay multiple times, and really getting to hear from you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. This was so fun. I loved your questions too, because they really
thank you,
made me think about my actual process. And I did not, girl, I know you was going on the blog. I was like, oh no.
I tried to do my homework a little bit.
Yes.
They were great questions. It was a great conversation, and we've got lots of good comments on Facebook, Jessica. So afterwards, go back and look at some of the fun comments. And one of them, Lisa, was for you too, that they love. So impressed with her interviews in the UT. So you're getting some love from Bonnie there too. So got a question here from Amanda for you, Jessica.
Okay.
Your fat activism work is so important. Did your focus on that come about in part from your efforts to not see yourself through colonial eyes?
No, my work as a fat activist honestly just came from showing up and seeing myself, truthfully. And having this identity and really identifying as a fat woman, and having people tell me that they didn't see me as fat. And I was like, what do you even mean? And so it was that kind of tension, because people were like, well, you don't act fat. And so I could hear that in the same way that people would say I didn't act Black. Yeah. And when people said that to me, that's what made me really interested in researching fatness, because it almost felt like, because I wasn't stereotypically fat, whatever that means, all of the negative associations that we put on fatness, because I wasn't those things, that I got to opt out of that identity, and I didn't want to. And so that's really where it came from. It came from a true exploration of how people were responding to this identity of mine and how I wanted to respond to it. And wanting people who had that identity to be able to be empowered and to write their own definition and own stories around what fatness meant to them.
And I wanted to, your coworker that was bragging on you for your own book as a bookstore and as hosting lots of authors all the time, and it may not come natural for you to brag on yourself and promote this book. It's fantastic. And it's like, and we all love when people brag on themselves when they have great books. So
I'm trying to get used to it.
Yeah, try to embrace that too, because it's really a good thing. Because we all absolutely love that. We're just about out of time. So, again, so enjoyed this conversation. Lisa, for viewers, yeah, go ahead.
Can I just ask her one more question?
You betcha.
Okay, so I'm curious. Were there any of the other essays in the book? I know they're all wonderful, but were there any that really connected and landed with you really strongly? And whose was it, and what was it about that?
Yes. Two of them actually. So the one about Black Church Ladies by Tracy, oh my gosh, I know everybody's Twitter name.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead and shout it out, because maybe they'll follow on Twitter.
No, but Tracy McKell Lewis Giggets, that's how I'm saying her last name. Her essay on Black Church Ladies And then Tanya Denise Fields.
Okay, yeah, Tanya's. Whew.
I've been in Tanya's DMs all day.
Look, I have to stop myself from jumping in Tanya's DMs to write long walls of just.
Do it. I do it. I send her long video soliloquies.
Yeah.
I don't even care. I don't care. I feel like, you know, I imagine if it were me, I would want somebody to tell me how their work, like what their work meant to me, especially because I know what it was like to write an essay like this. It's hard.
Yeah.
You turn yourself inside out and you give it to the world to be judged.
Right.
And it's, you know, I told Tanya earlier, you know, we're turning our pain into something beautiful, and that's alchemy. And so we have to really see ourselves as alchemists and just own that. So I pour love into her, and I would tell anybody else, if you connect with an essay, reach out to the essayist and just love on them, because we need that.
Yeah, it's true.
So true.
Very heavy work. Yeah.
Those affirmations they're uplifting. They feed us.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. You're getting lots of love. Bonnie saying that you revealed, so she can't wait to read your book because she's just so excited about this. So lots of good things. So great end of question. So Lisa, for people who are watching, if they want to, I know you work at the UT, but do you do any social media or any place you want to send people to follow you if they want to?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. My work presence is on Twitter and also on Facebook. So on Twitter, it's just Lisa Deaderick. It's at Lisa Deaderick. And on Facebook, just look up Lisa Deaderick.
Perfect. Yeah. And thank you for doing the interview. And Jessica, how about you? If people want to follow you for more, somebody was asking about your blog. Where do you do your blog at?
Yes, so I have a blog. It is Jessica James, JAMESE.com. And all of my social media is the Jessica_J.
Because that's good to know, because I tried to find you on Twitter today because it was good, and I was like, I can't find her.
The actress Jessica Williams comes up a lot.
Yeah. I was like, where is she?
No, I started using my middle name because now there's another Jessica Williams out in the world. Well, there are plenty of us, but
yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Well, your name is wonderful and your essay is fantastic. And thank you both for being here and sharing it with all of us. This was terrific.
Thank you so much for having me.
Good night, Facebook, and YouTube if you're watching us later. So good night, everybody.
Bye.